Hi, welcome to Talia Nerds Out. This is my second video that I'm recording in a row. So, yes, I am wearing the same clothes. Yes, I'm in the same location. This is my first time recording a booktube in this location. If you have not seen the previous video, or you just don't remember, this is location where I normally record with my mom for our knitting and crocheting YouTube channel. So, hang on, drink of water. I have not recorded here in the past simply because I tend to have a reaction to bright lights due to some of my medical conditions. So I just need to be very cognizant of where I record, when, the amount of light I have, etc. So if there's anything with the shadows that is a bit off, that is because I don't have the amount of light in my face that I could possibly, but that would make this video impossible. But yeah, this is my normal video recording space when I am doing YarnTube, I guess is what they call it now. We used to just call it knitting podcasts, but I think the new cool thing is to call it YarnTube. Anyway, but my previous video I had talked about some books that I had picked up, and one of the books that I had finished since my previous video. Now I am going to be pulling out the book journal again to talk a bit about another book that I finished. Technically another 2 books, but so my book journal, and hang on, I can move my ribbon now. So this book is actually one I borrowed from Hoopla. I am pretty much homebound, so I'm not able to pick up library books the way I would otherwise like to, and I probably wouldn't be able to read them in a timely enough fashion to get them returned on time, even if I could get someone to pick them up for me, and or they would get lost in the catastrophe that is my living space. So Hoopla is a way to go for me if I don't outright purchase the book myself. So this was based on a recommendation, and it was by I Can See You in My Head, and I remember a part of your YouTube name and I can't remember it, but he had read Franz Schmidt's A Hangman's Diary, a journal of Master Franz Schmidt, public executioner of Nuremberg. Now, in a previous video, I had discussed how I had I had listened to this book. I had listened to a book called The Faithful Executioner about Meister Franz Schmidt. I had not actually read his diary in his own words at that point. I mean, they would have excerpts from his diary within the work, but I had not gone and looked for his actual diary. So once I became aware that this was something that I could borrow on Hoopla, I did. So I made my little library card, as I am doing. I also created my card catalog card, my library catalog card, and I actually ended up giving this a 3-star. I read this book over a period of, I read it over a period of 8 days. And I do have other places that I could stamp should I choose to reread this. I don't see myself rereading this, unlike The Faithful Executioner, which I really enjoyed. This was kind of okay for me. Something that I did go into this book knowing was that Franz Schmidt wouldn't always expound upon the kills that he was ordered to do. So he would say things like 2 thieves hung, or this person whipped out of town. So there wasn't always a lot of detail. Now, some people he went into a great amount of detail when speaking about them, or in writing about them in this case. He would talk a bit about the person who would have their name, their nickname, what crime they committed, sometimes in great detail, sometimes in gruesome detail. And he might go on to talk about how they approached their death, whether or not they ended up accepting God at the end, whether they went to their death well, or whether they had to be carried kicking and screaming. So those were the interesting ones. I do feel that because this was a diary, and something that he probably didn't necessarily expect to be read past maybe people that he knew, if he even anticipated them reading it, because I don't feel like he intended this for a wider audience through the ages, he doesn't go into a whole ton of background detail as to why culturally these things were punished the way they were. Just even necessarily why said person committed said crime. That wasn't necessarily his aim. This crime had been committed, justice got served. Did this person die well? Those kind of things. That was, for him, all that was really important. He didn't necessarily care why you did it. It was a list. It was a way of keeping track. And I think a way, almost like a way for some of these people, he studied them. I think he might have been intrigued by some of these people, or simply horrified about the depravity of some of these crimes. And that might have been why he wrote some of these things down. I do also wonder, and this isn't something that's covered in this book, this is something that's covered more in The Faithful Executioner. Franz Schmidt, in The Faithful Executioner, is mentioned as not drinking, not indulging in alcohol. Because of this, he did actually get a pretty good reputation as being sober, as not making mistakes because of being drunk, which could not be said for many executioners. A lot of them did drink away the horrors that they saw, drank away the fact that they had to kill all these people. That's how they kind of numbed themselves. And I wonder, first of all, Franz Schmidt had multiple reasons, I think, for keeping this diary. One of which I believe might have been his own cathartic way of dealing with the things he had to do as the hand of the government. So I wonder if writing these things down, reminding himself why he did this, keeping track of, yes, I did this to this person, but this is why. This is why I was called to administer whatever punishment, to execute this person in whatever way I was forced to execute them. So I do wonder if, to a certain extent, there is a level of catharsis with this. Then I do also believe, and this is brought up in The Faithful Executioner, his family was not a long line of executioners. This was something that was forced upon his family, starting with his grandfather. The ruler of that area was known for just not being a great guy. He wanted to execute somebody. He pointed to Franz Schmidt's grandfather and said, "You execute them," because no one wanted to execute the person. And when he was like, "No, I don't want to do that. I've got a trade. I don't want that, stigma. No." And he's like, "Okay, you don't execute this guy. I'll execute I think it was like 2 or 3 guys around you, and then I still want you to execute that guy." So Franz Schmidt's grandfather gave in, and that stigma, that stain, was placed upon his family. So his father could not get any job but to be an executioner, and that was also what Franz Schmidt could not do. That was the only thing that Franz Schmidt could do, was get a job as an executioner. But both his father's name and his own was to eventually, they wanted to take that stain off of their family. They wanted to get a reputation so good that they could get their good name back. They could be reestablished as being able to be in society. Because if you were a hangman, you weren't allowed to be buried in a Christian plot. You couldn't enter a church. It was really, you were persona non grata. You were, no one wanted anything to do with you. Except, if you were going to be their healer, if you're going to be their physician, for lack of a better term, then they wanted you because you knew the body unlike anyone else. And you were used to patching up prisoners so they could meet justice as they saw it, They wanted to make sure they paid for their crimes in the way that was deemed by law, so they needed to be healthy enough to do so. But a lot of hangmen also had a side gig as being physicians. So, because people knew that they had better knowledge than anyone else, and there was also a superstition about hangmen actually having some sort of magical healing ability. I can't remember what it stemmed from. Faithful Executioner talks about it. This book does not. But yeah, this book, I do believe Franz Schmidt was keeping track of the things he did, not only for his own personal sanity, but maybe even as a reference for later when he would lay out his case before the powers that be, to say, hey, I have served faithfully. This was not just that this got put upon my family. Can this stigma be lifted so my family doesn't have to bear this load, this stain of being an executioner anymore? And spoiler alert, he does get that lifted. Again, that's from the Faithful Executioner. This is not mentioned in Franz Schmidt's diary. And none of his sons end up being executioners. They all end up being physicians. So, yes, so my ending thoughts on this, 3 stars for this book, only because I had already absorbed a lot of this information from the Faithful Executioner in a way that was far more interesting to me, and the Hangman's Diary just lacked a lot of context, simply because Franz Schmidt would not have felt much of a need to provide context in his own personal diary. I mean, there are a couple of essays at the beginning, but I really do feel that the Faithful Executioner does a better job of passing that information on to the reader while still giving Franz Schmidt a voice. Let's see if I got all my points. I think I did. So yeah, I did draw the cover, just did a little sketch for that. And he lived from 1573 to, I'm not sure if he was public execution from 1573 to 1617 or if he lived from 1573 to 1617. Let me math that. And by math that I mean I'm going to get my phone out and let it do the mathing for me. Alrighty, what did I say? Got too far. Okay. 1671 to 1573. Okay, that was his lifespan. Wait, not 1671. Gosh, I flipped numbers. 1617. There we go. That's a lot better. 1573. 44. Okay, I think he lived past 44, so that might have been his career. But I can't remember. Again, that's information that the Faithful Executioner gives, not this book. So yeah, that's it's a good book. I'm not going to read it again. I will probably revisit the Faithful Executioner at some point, but not this book. Okay, so the other book that I finished, and this is going to be really quick overview. I didn't even bother doing a sketch for it. It is a 5-star book for me. It's a book that I've reread many times. I did make a catalog card for it. This is Timothy Zahn's Star Wars: Heir to the Empire. It's book one of the Thrawn trilogy. It's probably my favorite of the Star Wars Extended Universe series. So I have my library card for that. I actually got the stamp right the first time around. I don't love this cover. Okay, I don't mind the cover. It's not as great as my original copy that I had. I kick myself for getting rid of that. But I hate, and I've mentioned this before, I hate the Essential Legends collections on here because this is just Disney's way of rebranding it and going like, oh, that extended universe stuff that was like around forever, that's nothing. Our stuff, our crap, horrible stuff, that's the new Star Wars. This is Star Wars. This is, years upon years, this extended universe has been going on since the original movies have come out, essentially. I remember, I think the first one that might have come out, I want to say Splinter in the Mind's Eye. Hang on, let me look at the back. Splinter in the Mind's Eye, that's what I thought. I think that's the first one that was written after the trilogy. The reason I say that is they haven't quite, it might not have even been written after the trilogy. It might have been written after A New Hope or after Empire Strikes Back. Because you can tell they don't have a really good grasp yet on the characters. Luke and Leia don't quite feel like Luke and Leia yet. I mean, they do a bit, but they don't quite have that Luke and Leia feel that you get after years of people writing them in the extended universe. And I don't think the author knew at that time what Luke and Leia's actual relationship was going to be. So I think that Splinter of the Mind's Eye was written quite early on. This little timeline doesn't tell me, but that's what I remember. It's been a long time since I've read that one, simply because it's not my favorite one in the extended universe. But yes, it has a nice little timeline in the back. And yeah, this has always been one of my favorite books. It has Timothy Zahn as the author. Probably my favorite sci-fi author, hands down. I will probably pick up after this trilogy, well, after I finish his whole series that he has with these characters. I will probably then go on and return to some of his original works. So that includes Angel Mass, probably the first work I read of his that was not a Star Wars book. What else? So it's Angel Mass. Oh, I have the new one that he wrote. So he has Icarus Hunt, and then he has the other book that he just put out that's supposed to be running concurrently with Icarus Hunt, but from a different point of view. And I can't remember what that one's called because it just came out and I haven't read it yet. Then there is, the Quadrail series, amazing series. And a bunch of others, his that actually I need to get caught up. But I tend to reread the ones I like the best of his. And those are another standalone that I love. But I usually think of Angel Mass when I think of his standalones that I love. But yeah, this book was written, actually it should say in my journal, what I write on here, because I wrote it on my library card. Okay, so this is trade paperback edition. Okay, it was originally published Penguin Random House in 1991 as a hardcover. So this is the Del Rey paperback. So, and this Del Rey paperback was very recent. I don't think I wrote down. Oh, yes, I would have. Hang on. It's a 2021 Del Rey publication. So yeah, that's it for the books I finished. Before I go on with the books I'm currently reading, I just wanted to give a quick glimpse of some of my new toys. My custom stamp. You go on Amazon, there's plenty of custom stamps that you can make. I liked this one because it had a cup of tea with books, so that's really my kind of thing. I love tea. I also looked up, because these are self-inking stamps, and I looked up what I needed to do, like when the ink runs out, and you can just put a couple drops on there and let it spread throughout, and then you can just re-ink them. Which is cool. That's what I'll do. I'll continue doing black ink because I just feel like it'd be better. Then my other one, and this one I can actually put replacement ink pads in. And this is my one with the dates. This one's just your typical, simple dates stamp. So that one's pretty easy. And then I have in here just a simple card file box. As I'm reading books, I add them to the catalog, like back here, the next one in the Braun trilogy. So I can look them up by author name, or when I put the library cards in here, I put them in Dewey Decimal Code order, which it just makes me happy. So there's my catalog, what I'm currently reading, and that leads me on to talking about what I'm actually reading. I actually need to make a library card for this one. It's How to Win Friends and Influence People. My dad's been mentioning this book forever, by Dale Carnegie. He says he rereads it all the time. I'm not terribly far along. I'm on chapter 3. I'm going through it slowly. It's just, a lot of it when you think about it is like, oh yeah, that's common sense. But it's the things that we just don't always do, even though intuitively when we hear it, we're like, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, rereading, or not rereading, this is the first time reading this slowly. I will need to make a library card for this and a catalog card. So the other thing, guys, I am slowly but surely making my way through Emma. I'm about to head into the infamous Box Hill incident. And I won't say much more about that for people who have not read Emma, but this is usually where I start dragging my feet a little bit, because yes, people who have read Emma might know why. But once I get past that, this book will go by so fast, because this is really a nice ending. And then I get to read Persuasion, which is one of my favorite of Austen's books. So Persuasion is my reward for finishing Emma. This is a lovely book, though. Look at that. And I, of course, stamped it. This stamp did get a little bit smudged, or not smudged, didn't stay fully inked. I probably closed it before letting it dry. But there's that. Let me keep this separate of Heir to the Empire, because that's a finished book. There. Then I ended up getting a physical form of this book, because I was like, wow, I'm really enjoying this book. I kind of want to have this in physical form. So this is Inside the Tudor Court. It's Henry VIII and his 6 wives through the writings of the Spanish ambassador Eustace Chapuis. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. He's a Savoyard, and he spoke French primarily, so I don't know how to pronounce that. Even though he's a Spanish ambassador, he was actually Savoyard. But this is written by Laura McKay. She is actually, I feel, really good about not just casting judgment upon Chapuis the way that apparently a lot of authors do. They don't, they'll use him as a source, but they'll also kind of, in the same breath, discount him because of bias. And he did have biases, but as I've mentioned in previous videos, the author points out that it actually behooved him to provide as honest of a point of view as he could to Emperor, I think it was Charles. I think it was Charles. Anyway, to provide as accurate point of view as he could, because he was a diplomat there, and his boss needed to know how to behave, how to act based on the information Chapuis provided, and it could ruin him politically if he was not someone who could be trusted to give proper information. I do want to say it's Charles. Let's see. But yeah, Charles. They do include in here pictures in the center, which I always love. I mean, some of the typical ones that are probably ones done by, why did I lose his name? I even read a book on him. It's left me. I'll remember it later. He was the artist at the Tudor court, and he did quite a bit of art for them. I even read a book about him, but Hans Holbein. I think it's actually Hans Holbein Jr., because I think his father was also an artist. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've read that book. But a couple of these paintings are well-known Holbeins. I believe that this one was a Holbein. And the famous Thomas More is also Holbein. Let's see. I'm not sure if they included the famous Thomas More in here. Yeah, don't see Thomas More's in here. Probably because Chapoy didn't have a whole lot of contact with Thomas More himself. A lot of things with images of him. But yeah, I look forward to continue my way through this. I did have to stamp this again because this one didn't take. So I did it over here. But yeah, this is going to be great. I have enjoyed it so far. I'm sure I will continue to enjoy this. I mentioned that I started the next book in the Thrawn trilogy. Here it is. This series goes by fast when I actually sit down and read it. Shocking, I know. Here is my space bookmark, my sci-fi bookmark, and this is a Miller Paper Co. bookmark. I tend to like Miller Paper Co. bookmarks. I particularly like the magnetic ones, which is what I have in Chapoy's book. And what I try to do, so I know where I'm at, is I'll put the part with the, I don't know, name, signal, whatever, to mark, okay, that was the last one I read. So I know even what page I'm on, just from glancing. Still reading Teresa Babel. This is going to be a while going. I mean, this is a thick book. But this is her autobiography. I've talked about this a lot of times. Don't really need to go into too much detail with that. I do want to go in a little bit more detail about a couple of the books. First of all, I did start reading this one, which is A Valiant Bishop Against a Ruthless King, The Life of St. John Fisher. This is one of my big pet peeves right now, is that I can't find hardly anything about him, whereas like there's Thomas More all over the place, and they were martyred like one after another. It was John Fisher first, then Thomas More after, same period of time. Obviously, if they're, beheaded one after another, duh. But great job, Talia. The other thing for him is, I don't know, he just doesn't really get talked about that much. And I don't know why. He was a huge defender of Catherine of Aragon during the divorce proceedings. One of the few people on her side, vocally on her side, along with Chapoy. I don't honestly remember. I mean, I know Thomas More would have been on her side, but I don't think he was as vocal as John Fisher. John Fisher, they even questioned whether or not there was a near poisoning. A bunch of people got sick. Actually, I don't know if anyone actually died, but some food was thought to be poisoned. Some people whispered that it might have been Anne Boleyn or someone under her employ, because he was very much not liked by anyone in the Anne Boleyn camp who wanted Catherine of Aragon to kind of go away. So I do look forward to reading this. Right off the bat, I can tell you that this isn't necessarily a scholarly piece of work. There are no footnotes or endnotes. It very much has more of a storytelling feel to it, but this is the only book I could find on him. So I've got to take what I can get and just acknowledge that, okay, I'm going to have to pull from other sources, Chapoy, other sources of the period, to then cross-reference, to be like, okay, how much of his actual story can I pull? Not that I'm saying that this is necessarily inaccurate. I just can't verify the accuracy, how accurate, how inaccurate, because there are no references that I can see that are in this book. But yeah, this is by Paul McCann. It is a rare reprint put out by Kessinger Publishing. But yeah, I think I mentioned, and these will be what I close the video with, and they kind of are related. I did end up picking up The Collector of Lives. I was listening to it, but I felt like this book would benefit from actually being read physically. And I switched over to listening to a book on Henrietta Maria, and maybe I will talk about that next time. I am thoroughly enjoying that. They have a very good reader. And yeah, I will talk about Henrietta Maria at a different point. But that audiobook replaced this one because I wanted it in physical form. So this is The Collector of Lives, Giorgio Vasari and the Invention of Art. And it's by Ingrid Rowland. And I don't know if Noah Charney is another writer, or if this is a translator, if it was even translated, I don't know why his name is up here. They don't really make it clear. Okay, hang on. Actually, I think that they are both authors. Rowland is always the one that the book is listed under when you look up the Dewey Decimal System. So, I don't know. But what I like about having this is I get to actually see Vasari's artwork, because my dad studies art on his own. That's how he learned to paint. We live basically in an art gallery because of his painting. But even him, with his expansive knowledge of art, he's devoured art history. He knows a ton about art, and he knew of Vasari's work in The Collector. I think it's not called The Collector of Lives. I think it's called The Lives of the Artists. He was familiar with Vasari through that, but he was not aware that Vasari himself was an artist. And this book had even mentioned that a lot of people forget about Vasari as an artist because they think of him so much as a writer. And case in point, by my dad, who has studied art history very extensively, both to know about art and the artist, but also to learn from them, their techniques, everything from, masters. But yeah, so he was not aware that he was an artist. So here's a self-portrait, I'm not sure, self-portrait by Vasari. I actually really love these two at the bottom. So I think this one's Vasari. I hope that I didn't hit the microphone. This one's Vasari in his art studio, and this is his art of St. Luke painting the Virgin Mary. I kind of like the fact that they kind of mirror each other. Both have the painter facing the same direction, with the thing or person being painted in the same general area, and then there's something or someone behind the artist in both of them, and then off on the right hand side, straight, not behind the artist, but off to the artist's right hand side to the back, and on the viewer's right hand side is someone in the background being seen through a doorway. In Vasari's painting, it looks like it's maybe his apprentices. In his self-portrait painting, it looks like it is maybe an apprentice. Whereas in his painting of St. Luke, it looks like almost like there's some guy, I don't know what he's doing, but he's got like an apron on, and he's working on something on a desk in a slightly better lit area than the guy in this area. So I just thought that the comparison between the two works of art was very interesting. But yeah, I do like the pictures in here. I enjoy the style of writing. I like the fact that the pages are a bit uneven. And I look forward to reading this further. I did stop in the middle of a chapter, but this is easygoing. I'll probably finish this chapter before I go to bed, at least. I'm actually making good progress through this. Okay, so yeah, there's that one, and then I will end with the final one. I barely started this one. Ugh, this is heavy. Okay, this is a book that I got through Yale. When I got the 50% off, I picked up a bunch of my hair. I get that curl right in the middle of my forehead. Anyway, got a bunch of art history books for 50% off at Yale. from Yale University Press. And one of the books I picked up, and this one I kept for me, is Venice Illuminated, Power and Painting in Renaissance Manuscripts by Helena Catalin Cespi. I do believe there might be a translator for this. I'm not sure, though. That last name kind of looks like it might be Italian. So, of course, I have my stamp on this. I have my couch potato magnetic bookmark. It will earn the art bookmark from Collector of Lives once Collector of Lives is finished. So this talks about the illuminated manuscripts and what they meant besides just their artistic value. So I do look forward to proceeding in this book, but I have a feeling I will finish Collector of Lies before I go much farther into this. Yes, I'm kind of making a little art history journey that I didn't anticipate. But yes, I hope to get this one started fairly soon if I can finish Collector of Lives. So yeah, I believe that is it for me for this night, this video. I hope that you have a very blessed day, and I will see you again next time. God bless. Bye.